Hi friends, welcome to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Caitlin and I like to film eyeshadow palette ranking and review videos, as well as the occasional other eyeshadow palette related content sprinkled in. I typically focus on indie makeup, but occasionally mix in some mainstream stuff as well. So if you like eyeshadow palettes, I highly recommend that you hit that subscribe button because I post 2 videos every single week. And for those of you that are not new here, my face is happy that you are seeing it again. And today I have my March eyeshadow palette ranking video. For those of you that have never seen one of these videos from me before, I like to rank every palette that I use in the prior month. I don't like to just focus on the new. I like to also show you what older palettes I've been reaching for and have my thoughts changed since the last time we chatted about those. So if that sounds interesting to you, please hit that like button and go ahead and keep on watching. Okay, I have no idea how many palettes I used. I did a lot of looks that had like multiple palettes, so I think I have a lot of palettes. If you are very curious, you can hit the description box. I'll have listed every palette. I also, in the description box, always include links to any videos that I've done using the palettes, featuring them, videos or shorts, now that I'm, doing shorts on my channel. So if you need or want look inspiration from any of these palettes that I talk about, check the description box. Okay, so we're just gonna get into it. I always like to rank my palettes in sort of a tier ranking. So we have 4 categories. We have the first category, which is meh. I don't really like them. There's something about the palettes that I'm just like, I don't like. And then the next tier is, I like it, it's okay, but if it were to disappear out of my collection, I probably wouldn't be that upset about it. 2 are palettes that I like. I really like these palettes, they're great. And then, or 2, the second highest tier. That's tier 3, but anyways, whatever. You guys get what I'm saying. And then the last tier, so the top tier, is palettes that I absolutely love. I would consider them like holy grail favorites. And you might this week judge me because that is by far the largest category. But listen, I love eyeshadow, so many of these palettes I just love. I love them. I love them. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I don't count down my ranking because I can't keep track. So we are starting with the palettes that are in the first tier, and probably surprising no one, this is the Unearthly Cosmetics Complex palette. If you didn't catch this video, I tested this palette out in my video where I tested defective makeup. Unearthly Cosmetics launched a couple of bundles for palettes that were defective. They had a few shades that didn't work. So yeah, no surprise that the eyeshadow palette where only 1, maybe 2 shades actually works is last. Don't ask me why I bought defective makeup. I didn't know the answer when I filmed the video, and I don't know the answer now. Next up, we have the other palette that I got in that defective bundle. This is the Unearthly Cosmetics Unforseen palette. This one, more of the shades work, and they were pretty, but this one shade exploded, and the whole thing's kind of messy. So I don't know. I didn't love the look I did with this, so I'll have to try and use this more, but honestly, I don't know if I will. Also, this is a typo, which once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Anyways, next up is the Pastel Roses Frozen Dreams palette. This palette is cute, it's pretty, it's fine. I don't know, there's something about this palette that I just don't vibe with. I don't want to keep reaching for it. I forced myself to use it so I could finish up my review because I will have a palette palooza coming with all of the with the first 10 palettes that I purchased this year. I know it's March, so or no, it's not even March. Oh my god, it's April. Anyways, posting that in April to finally finish reviewing the first 10 palettes. But anyways, next up we have the other palette from that collection from the Pastel Roses. This is the Gingerbread Factory palette. This one I actually usually put lower than the Frozen Dreams, but I put this one higher because I do feel like you can get a really nice neutral look, and I feel like these shimmers seem to last longer on my lid. They don't seem to crease as much, so yeah, I don't know. There was just something about these that I just didn't vibe with as much as I wanted to. Obviously, Unforeseen and Complex are 2 new to me palettes. I didn't count them in my new, or not new to me. Well, I guess kind of new to me, but new. They were released. I didn't know how to count these. So anyways, these are newer, but I I only have one palette in the, like, I like it, but I could kind of take it or leave it category. And that's going to be the Nomad Cosmetics Whistler Snow Lodge palette. I've talked about this palette a lot and that I just struggle with this color story. It just is like a personal preference thing. The shimmers in this palette are nice. There's actually a couple of duochromes in here that are really, really pretty. And I think the matte, like the greens and the blues, they all work well. I just can't ever get a look that I am just obsessed with just using this palette. I did like the look that I did for the Nomad bracket style video that you will all be seeing soon-ish, hopefully. But I combined a lot of stuff on there to like make me like it more. So anyways, those are my thoughts on that one. No quality issues though. And there's no quality issues with the Pastel Roses ones either. It's just like a overall feeling of disappointment. And I don't know how to explain it. This next category is going to take a minute to get through. There's quite a few palettes. First up is, so this is the category that I like all of these palettes. I do. I really like them. There's no issues with them. It's just, I love the top category more. So first up, we're going to go the Unearthly Cosmetics collab with Chippo Gray. This is Rudo Rame, I think is how you say that. I don't believe this palette is available anymore. I'm pretty sure it was limited edition and it's since been discontinued. This palette is pretty. It's a rainbow palette and I had a little bit of trouble blending. I combined it with the Unearthly like defective shade, so that could be why it's just down here. I just didn't like that look. So that's probably like tainting my feelings on this one because in the past I've used this palette and I've thought it was really gorgeous. So I do like the color story on this, but yeah, I'm just overall right now not feeling super inspired by it. Next up is the Nomad Cosmetics Monteverde Cloud Forest palette. This palette is a stunning like green palette with pops of neon, which I think is an interesting color story. I really like this palette. I think the mattes perform really nicely. I really like the look that I did with this palette last month as part of my Nomad like bracket thing that I'm doing. So yeah, I really like this palette. It's another one of Nomad's where I just don't know what to do with just this palette. I tend to reach for other things. And I've said this before, but if you're an all shimmer palette, I'm okay that you're a companion palette. If you're an all matte palette, I'm okay that you're a companion palette because that is what you are designed and intended to be. I have an issue or not an issue, but I like rank palettes lower if I feel like you're a companion palette when you have mattes and shimmers, because then I feel like you should be a complete palette, but you're not. So it's not that there's anything wrong or bad about this. It's just like a personal preference thing. If you like greens, this is a great palette for greens. Or if you like neons, these are really solid neons as well. Next up is the Too Faced Italian Spritz palette. It smells delicious. I really had a good time with this palette. I had so much fun playing with it. Kind of similar to the Nomad palette. The shimmers aren't quite as sparkly as I would like them, so I tend to like top them with like a more specialized topper to just get that sparkly, glitzy effect that I'm looking for. But this is a really nice palette, especially if you, like for me personally, I don't mind doing crazy makeup looks for work as long as I don't have like meetings with people that I don't tend to normally work with. So if I'm seeing people that I don't normally see, I do try to like tone it down a little bit. And so I think this palette is really nice for that, but I also think it has some fun pops for the summer. So if you're a more neutral person, but also appreciate the occasional pop of color, I think this palette is really nice. I like it a lot and it has good quality. So yeah, I like that one. Next up is the Nomad Cosmetics Hudson Valley palette, and I feel a little bit bad putting in this here. I feel like it should almost be higher, but I don't know where I would put it. I just love all of these palettes so much. I really like this palette. I think it's really nice. I do like all of the shimmer shades. I like all of the matte shades. I even did like a red toned look with this palette, which I don't normally love red eyeshadow, although I have some red eyeshadow on right now, but typically I don't like red eyeshadow. But I really like the look that I did with this palette. I really enjoy this. I like the warmth. I like the cool. There's nothing bad about this. This is really totally personal preference, although I really feel like I could have put this one higher. I also feel like I could have put the next one higher and the next one and the next one and the next one, so here we are. Next up is the Bella Beauté Bar Star-Crossed Lovers palette. I really, really liked playing with this palette. I had so much fun. I think this palette, nope, Oh, you know what I did forgot to mention? The Italian Spritz palette was a palette that I purchased in the month of March, and it was my first time using it this past month. So that is one of the new palettes. I always like to mention if it's a new palette, or just so you can kind of see where the new palettes kind of stack against palettes that are not new to my collection, because I think that's important, right? Like, just rating or ranking like new palettes against other new palettes is like cool if somebody's like looking to buy something new. But what if you're not sure if do you really need something new? And so I like to compare it to the palettes I already have, because if you're like, oh yeah, she liked them, but she liked a lot of her older stuff better. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Do you guys? Okay. Anyways, so this palette I think I got last month actually, but this is the Star-Crossed Lovers palette. This palette features really gorgeous duochromes. I think there's a multi-chrome or two in here, and the mattes perform really nice. I like Bella Beauté Bar's matte formula most of the time. There's the occasional shade that doesn't quite work for me, but I didn't have any issues with this particular palette. I feel like it was really nice, and I had a good time playing with it. I liked it a lot. It does tend to go more on the neutral purpley side, because it's not quite like in-your-face purples. It's more like softer neutral purples, but I think that's nice. And as you can see by my eye look today, I'm not necessarily what you would refer to as like a neutral person. But again, that's another good one. If you're having meetings at work, but you want like, okay, hold on, let me pull this back up. If you have meetings at work and you want something that's like kind of toned down, but you want like a special shimmer that's just like a showstopper, that's a really good palette for that. For Bella Beauté Bar, I do have a code. It is katelynhousemakeup, and it will save you 10%. Their site is closed. Well, actually, I don't know if when this video is going up. Their site might be open when this video goes up, but if you see anything from them that you like and would like to purchase, I would really appreciate it if you use my code. It is an affiliate code, so just know that. Next up, Nomad Cosmetics Haunted Europe. I mean, do I need to say anything? This palette is so pretty. I love this so much. I love the theming of it. It's so fun because you can truly get like a neutral leaning look, either cool toned, like warm tone neutrals, or you can have like these fun random pops of color in it. And so I do think this is a really nice color story, and I feel like a unique color story. I don't know that I've seen this color story before, so I really like this palette, and I had fun playing with it, especially for the Nomad Bracket Challenge. Next up, Nomad Cosmetics America's Parks. And I don't know, there's just something about this palette. I know that it's kind of like a grungy rainbow, so that was like turned some people off of it, but I really feel like you can get cool, like somebody used this term on Instagram and I'm totally stealing it, and I don't remember who said it, but neutral adjacent looks. So not quite neutral, but like almost neutral looks. I feel like you can get that with this palette. And then you can get some colorful looks for sure, don't get me wrong. But I did just like with these shades do a look with like just the yellows and then the brown. And it was practically neutral, but it did have yellow in it. And I really liked how that look turned out. So I just, every time I play with this palette, I'm like, wow, I did something that I didn't, when on first impression, didn't think I could do with it. So I don't know, makes me really like this palette. So I enjoy playing with that. Next up is the Nomad Cosmetics Paradise Islands. Obviously I've been using all of my Nomad palettes to do this Nomad series, so that's why they're all in here. But this palette is so fun, especially as we head into spring and summer. I adore this palette. I want to continue to reach for it. I just think it's so pretty. So I had to put it somewhat high. Next up is actually the palette that is on my eyeballs right now, and this is the Bella Beauté Bar collab with Lexi Lala Makeup. This is the CEO of the Rainbow palette. The last time I used this palette, I think I said that I didn't love it. Like I felt like I had issues with the mattes. Today's look, I feel like these mattes blended so beautifully. So I used the shade Thunderbolt, Sunset, Volcano, and Purple Rain up on like my upper crease. And I just dug my finger into my face. Anyways, and then on my lower lash line, I did Blue Moon, Frostbite, and then I did a shadow wing with Atmosphere. And then on the lid, I have Fool's Gold, Lagoon, and Cyclone. I have these three shimmer shades on my lid. And then I did Cloud 9, the white shade, in the inner corner. So obviously used a lot of different shades. I feel like what I typically like criticize, and am I sitting high enough for this? I don't know. Anyways, typically what I criticize with some of the Bella Beauté Bar mattes is I say that they're like kind of a thin formula, and so they're not as pigmented as I would like them to be. But I found that with today's look, they were pretty pigmented. I had to build them up like a little bit, but it really wasn't that bad. So I might want to revisit some of the neon shades, or it's possible that the neon shades were the shades that I struggled with, although I feel like Sunset could almost be a neon shade, and that one worked pretty well. So did Thunderbolt. But anyways, the shades that I had issues with in the past were the yellow and the green. And I am out of breath. But yeah, I really liked this palette a lot more using it, well, this past month, and then I also used it again today. So yeah, I've found that I've been reaching for this, and I think it's an interesting color story, so I like it. Next up is the Ace Beauté Tropical Vibes palette. This is, now, okay, the Nomad palette, if you're a green lover, is good, but this is also, like, of the two, if you could only pick one green palette, I feel like this is the best green palette. Like, you just have so much variety with greens in here. You have like kind of your foresty toned greens, you have neon like lime shades, you have like the grungy greens, and for me personally, I lean more towards like a grungy green. So this palette speaks to me a little bit more as far as greens go, but I really enjoy this palette. I love Ace Beauté's formula. I feel like they have a pretty underrated eyeshadow formula in my humble opinion. But yeah, those were a lot of palettes for that category. I think we should all take a minute to take a drink, because now we're going into the last category, and that category has even more. Okay, I can't put that drink down. Now we're going into the last category, and that category has even more palettes than this one did. All right, so as a reminder, this is the palette that I kind of describe as like my favorites, holy grails, and yeah, I think over half of the palettes that we're ranking today fall into this category. So could I have probably moved some of these into the last category? Probably, but I didn't. So here we are. I'm feeling good today, I guess. So this is the Adept Cosmetics La Cienega palette. This one probably definitely could have been in the last category now that I think about it, but I just really love these shimmers, and I think this is a really good matte formula from Adept. And it's just like, to me, having a neutral palette that could be like a special neutral palette in like a one-stop shop, I'm kind of a fan. I am. I don't love this Hermosa Beach shade, but I really like the rest of the palette. I'll give more fleshed out thoughts when I do the Palette Palooza, because this palette is in that, because that was one of the first 10 palettes I purchased this year. So yeah, make sure to keep an eye out for that if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts on the La Cienega palette. I do believe you can purchase that from Adept now. I could be wrong on that though. Next up is the Nomad Cosmetics Iceland Fire and Ice palette. This is just one of my favorite Nomad palettes of all time. I love this color story. It's another one from Nomad where I am surprised by the looks I get each time, and I'm surprised by like the creativity that it inspires. I always kind of like want to mess around with it. So I really like this palette. I think it is gorgeous and fun to use. Nomad has a really great matte formula, and I feel like their shimmers have gotten even better since Iceland. So yeah, I really like their formula a lot. Next up is the Lunar Beauty Life's a Drag Facelift palette. Jeez Louise. The mattes in this palette are super nice. I don't think I've used these particular shimmers in this one. I think I continue to reach for this palette for the matte, but it was funny. So I did a look recently with this palette, and I pulled in the neutral shades, and I had the original Life's a Drag, and I had a favorite neutral matte combo in that palette, and I used those same shades to do like a neutral crease the other day, and I loved it. I was like, there's something about the tones of these neutrals over here, so I've literally like stuck to this half, but I really like it. And then I do like the pops of color. I don't know, I'm glad I had skipped this palette initially, because I was like, I have Life's a Drag, why would I get just the updated version? Like there's extra shades that I probably have in other palettes, like I don't need it. And then I noticed like some quality deterioration on my Life's a Drag, and I thought, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna get the new one. I don't even care. So I did, and I'm really liking it. I'm glad I did that. Next up is the Unearthly Cosmetics 1964 palette. I'm going to hold it sideways so it's easier. I adore this palette. I think this palette is so cute. I know a lot of people like really hyped up the other palettes in this Halloween collection from Unearthly, but this one was my favorite. I'm going to shut up now because this palette's no longer available, but it's real cute. This is the Unearthly Cosmetics The Weirdos palette. I think I just kind of put these next to each other. I don't know. I feel like these are equal. They're tied. Don't think that me putting this one over the other one means anything. This shade right here totally dried out for me. I could have messaged or emailed the brand to get a replacement shade, but honestly, I have so much freaking eyeshadow. It doesn't even feel worth it. I think it's a waste of like money for the brand to like ask for that when I'm really realistically gonna use it like a couple of times. So I'm just gonna leave it, count it as a loss, but I still like the rest of this palette and I don't mind reaching for this palette. Oh, I wonder if these are magnetic. If these palettes are magnetic, maybe I pop out the bad shades and then I just pop out the good shades from the defective palettes. You know what I mean? I might have just been onto something. But anyways, like this palette. I think it's fun to play with. Again, no longer available. I don't know if they're still selling the like redone version of the Weirdos. I feel like that one's no longer available as well. Okay. Next up is the Be Perfect Cosmetics and collab with Stacey Marie. This is the Interstellar 5 or the Carnival 5 Interstellar palette. God, that's a long name. This palette is gigantic. I don't typically like palettes this large, but there was something about this color story and theme that really spoke to me. I love space-themed stuff, so if it's anything related to space, you've pretty much got me. I'm not a hard sell. And then I liked that you have so many different options, and you have pastel shades in here, you have deeper shades, you have the like grungy grays. I just thought it was a really cool color story, so I like this one a lot. I am happy that I got it. Next up is the Lunar Beauty Nude Prism palette. So this was a new to me palette. I did buy and try this palette for the first time this month, and I cannot stop grabbing for it. Anytime I need a neutral like matte, I'm just like, oh yeah, let me just pull this bad boy out. This palette is so pretty, and I felt like when it launched, I was like, I don't need neutral palettes. To be fair, I think I had bought a lot of Viseart palettes recently, and to be fair again, do I need this in addition to all my Viseart palettes? No, I don't. I probably have these shades in the Viseart formula. But listen, this Lunar Beauty formula is nice. And it's nice to kind of have it in this like full palette. I don't know how to explain it. There's no logic to it, but it's so pretty. It really is. And having this palette makes me want to do like everyone I know's makeup, because I'm like, listen, this is a perfect neutral palette. I could do anyone's makeup. Even if you're a neutral girly, I want to do your makeup. So anyways, I think I went off on a tangent. All right, where are we at? How many do we have left? Oh, so the Lunar Beauty palette was top 10. So that was number 10. Okay, so number 9 is the Cosmic Brushes Serenity palette. I have had this palette since it launched initially last year, so it has been here a minute. And I said it then, and I'll say it now, this palette's amazing. Especially for the price, it is perfection. I skipped the Muse palette just because that color story didn't speak to me quite as much. And you know what? I'm pretty proud of that, because honestly, I haven't like felt like I'm like missing it in my collection. And that's not to throw shade at the brand or anything. I think it's a gorgeous palette. I think a lot of people really like that palette. I've seen people say that they like that palette more than the Serenity palette, but this one in particular really spoke to me, and I'm trying to cut back on how many palettes I'm buying. So yeah, here we are. Okay. Next up is the Adept Cosmetics Arrow Inspired palette. So this palette is full of gorgeous, gorgeous multi-chromes, and then these green mattes down here. I don't love the green mattes in here as much, but this palette pairs really nicely with any other green palette that I have in my collection, so I don't mind combining palettes. But yeah, I really like this palette. I think the special shades in here are so special that it like doesn't even matter. I do like the kind of this like grungy brownish, like greenish brown, I should say. Honestly, I like these 3 mattes over here. It was these more minty ones that I didn't love as much, but anyways, I really like that palette still. Next up is the Berry Icy palette from Simply Posh Cosmetics. This palette is gorgeous. Simply Posh has an amazing matte formula and shimmer formula. They kill it. It's great. Everything's perfect. I love the magnetic pans. I love that if I wanted to, I could pop things out, move them around. I love that I have this like column right here where I could do a more neutral leaning look. And then you also have like mint. Anyways, gorgeous color story, gorgeous palette, gorgeous formula, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Okay. Woo. Next up is the Nomad Cosmetics Fête de Provence palette. If you watch my Nomad ranking, you will know that I ranked this high. I don't want to say where, but I ranked this pretty high. I adore this color story. I think it's so, so pretty. I did a softer, like all matte look almost using this palette, and I thought that was fun. This palette will probably see some more use because I think it's a really good palette for spring. And I just love it. I think it's really pretty. And yeah, that's it. Okay. Another new palette. This is the Make Your Own Magic palette from Bella Beauté Bar. This is like a single bundle that you can get in a palette form, or you could get any of these shades as individual singles. I did a very detailed review on this palette where I showed 6 different looks that I did and just kind of played around with the formulas, showed how you could use them in different ways. I didn't like demo it, but I just kind of described how I tested them out in different ways and how they worked and things like that. I really like this palette. It is an all shimmer palette, so it's for sure a companion palette, but I've had a blast pairing it with any of the mattes. Like I paired this with the Nude Prism palette, like, and had a good time. Like, I just think this is really pretty. These 3 holochrome shades in particular, if you didn't want to pay for all of this, because it's quite a bit for this whole palette and the whole bundle, but if you had to pick shades, I'd say these 3 holochrome shades, those are my favorite. But only if you like glitter, like not because they're not glitter, but like if you like sparkle, because they're very sparkly. Okay, next up is another new palette for the month, and this is the Nomad Cosmetics Royal Europe. I still have mine in the box because it has the laser cut. I already kind of dinged the laser cut, so I wanted to try and keep it safe. Anyways, this is what this palette looks like. I was gifted this palette in PR, but that was not in exchange for any favorable posts or reviews or anything. They just asked me to give my honest thoughts and opinions, so that's what I'm doing. I really like this palette. It doesn't quite go light enough for me. I did in my video try and like lightly dust the mattes as much as possible, but they're still not quite light enough. And I'm talking about these 2. They're a little bit dark on my skin tone. My skin tone is like basically white, like the color white, like not, I don't even know if there's like a undertone to it. Just white is so pale. So I think that might be why. So that's the only reason that I wouldn't put it higher, because the multi-chromes are gorgeous. The matte color story is beautiful. But the only thing holding it back from being like my perfect palette is that. But I still really like it and really enjoy it. And yeah, I have quite a few friends who have codes with Nomad. So if you're wanting to pick up, since I'm talking about so many Nomad cosmetics palettes, I don't personally have a code, but I have a lot of friends with codes. So hit me up in the comments and I can send you somebody's code. All right, next up is in the number 3 spot is the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Lure palette. I finally got a chance to play with this a little bit more. I sort of hadn't like reached for it, and then I was like, oh, maybe I don't like this. And then I reached for it again, and then I kept reaching for it. So I do love this palette. I think it's really pretty. It is a mermaid dream. I adore it. I just think Blend Bunny, how they organize the palettes, how they kind of create their color stories, it just makes sense in my brain, so I really like it. Okay, number 2 and 1 are the are not brand new, but they're like relatively new. Royal Europe, what was that, 4th place, was the highest ranked new palette, if that helps keep track of things. Okay. Next up is the Unearthly Cosmetics collab with Brittany Huffman. This is the Midwinter Dream palette. I want to say it's sold out, but I saw that they were debating if they were going to bring it back for pre-order. I do have a code with Unearthly for 10% off. It's Caitlin House. If you wanted this palette or wanted to get something else from them and you wanted to use my code, that is there for your use. I will have my codes typed up in my description box as well. Anyways, back to this palette. I love this palette. This palette and the next palette, I could have probably interchanged spots. I absolutely love both of these palettes, and if I wasn't like interested in like reviewing palettes for people or posting social media content, if I was just doing makeup to do it for myself, like I could have probably just purchased okay, hold on, let me backtrack. I was gonna say just these 2 palettes, but really it's more like the top 5 palettes that I ranked. I could have just gotten those 5 as like my new palettes for like the whole year and been like totally set and happy, but alas, that is not who I am. Here we are, so we have to keep buying stuff, but I love this palette. It is so pretty. I have yet to do a look with this palette that I have not liked. Like seriously, there's been not a dud. Same with number 1. So the number 1 palette is the Nomad Cosmetics Verona Amore y Morte palette. And I am sorry, but I just can't stop loving this palette. I know in my review I mentioned that these 2 shades right here were a little bit harder pressed, but I was able to agitate them to the extent that I was able to make them work. I've seen other reviews where people could not make them work, and I saw that the brand said that there was a batch of palettes where those two shades were pressed harder than they should have been, and so you could contact the brand for a replacement if you're having that issue, which I thought was nice. Mine, I didn't feel like I needed that. I felt like those shades work fine, but really it's like this half of the palette that I really love anyway, but it is fun to like pull, like kind of mix and match and pull these in. But I love this palette. I think it's amazing. If we want to get real nitpicky, some of these mattes over here look kind of similar, and I don't think we could have like mixed it up a little bit more. Maybe put like a white instead of like one of these two shades here, and it would have been a little bit different, but whatever. It's fine. I like it. I really love this palette. I think the artwork is beautiful. I think the theming is beautiful. I love everything about this palette, and yeah, I can't be stopped. It is my top palette as of right now. So those were all of the palettes that I used in the month of March. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I love talking makeup with all of you. I know we all have different preferences, opinions, thoughts, feelings, all of that. So let me know just what your thoughts are. If there's any palettes that I ranked that you were like, nah, I don't like that at all and I loved it, totally fine. Let me know. I'd be curious to hear like what your opinions are, or if there's a palette that you really love that I either didn't have in this ranking at all that you want to just chat about, that's cool with me. Let me know what your favorite palette was that you used in the month of March. One thing I wanted to do this time that I haven't done in past videos is I wanted to talk about my most used palettes in the month, because I feel like that also sort of gives insight into like what am I consistently like reaching for. So this one I was reaching for a lot, but I was also doing like a dedicated video on it. But the one I used the most was the Make Your Own Magic palette from Bella Beauty Bar. I did use this palette on for 6 different looks. One of the looks I did like one eye and the other eye, so I don't know if you want to count that. But anyways, 5 separate times, 6 looks, I used that palette and really enjoyed it. And I could see myself reaching for this more when I want like a special shimmer to be included. Next up we have Midwinter Dream, Lure, and the Arrow Inspired palette. All have like a 3-way tie for second, in that I used all 3 of these 3 different times. So, you know, kind of kept returning to those palettes, which I think is cool. And then Nude Prism and the Nude Prism Royal Europe, the Star-Crossed Lovers, and Italian Spritz palettes I all used 2 times. So those were all the palettes that I picked multiple times. Typically I try to pick like a different palette every day, but those were the palettes that I, you know, kind of found myself reaching for a few times throughout the month. So yeah, okay, now that's officially it. Like I said earlier, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I hope you're all having a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye!